Well, hello everyone. It's the Gary Neville Podcast again, and we're at Old Trafford off the back of a 2-2 draw between Manchester United and Spurs. I wonder, Gary, how you feel about Manchester United by comparison with how you felt about them 2 hours ago or 2-3 weeks ago.
I don't think anything different really. I think let's do the positives first. I think the fact that Højlund takes that chance. He didn't get involved in the game a lot after that. But I wouldn't say that was necessarily down to him. It's the fact that Spurs just dominated possession and the service up to him. We'll come on to how United play in a bit. It means that they don't create sort of moments for him and play to his strengths. But I thought the way in which he finished it was really positive. And I thought in the first half, we have large expectations of Marcus Rashford because he set standards last season, which mean you've got to be consistent and maintain those standards. And he's dropped below them. So for him to not score at Old Trafford for the last 14 games, going back to last May, is something that you wouldn't have believed come the end of last season. So the fact that he scored, he looked dangerous in the first half. It looked like it was either going to be sort of him score at one end or Porro was going to set something up at the other when he didn't go back with him. And thought there were good battles in wide areas. So there's some positives in that sense for Manchester United that two of their sort of strikers have got on the score sheet, because you look at the stats around United's strike force and forwards and it really is appalling. And you look at the reasons for that. Well, one is form. The players are lacking confidence and they're not taking the chances. Second is the recruitment and the capability of the players. Now they're good enough to be in that position to be strikers and forwards for United. And then the third, I think, which is equally as important, is the style of play and the way in which the attacking patterns develop, so that you create chances for your forwards on a regular basis and you get more dangerous moments for them. And that's not quite there. The first one falls on the players, the second falls on the club to be better at recruiting, and the third falls on the coach to have better attacking combinations. So injuries are a factor as well, obviously, for United, in the sense that they're getting players back. But I don't think we can mention injuries today and absentees with the fact that Spurs, the team they're playing against, have played them off the park. And they've got 5 or 6 players that would walk into United's team. Some would play for United. Kulusevski would play for United. Maddison would play for United. And Sarr and Basuma would play for United. So there's 5 players there that I've named that would be in the Spurs starting 11 that haven't played, that would get into those that would be wearing those red shirts if they were at United. So we can't mention absentees or injuries. So positives in one sense, but a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we'll come to Spurs in a second, but in terms of big picture, how are you feeling about the mood music? Normally for football fans, ownership isn't particularly sexy. They're just interested in who's on the field. But there has been, over the course of the last week, some nice stuff coming out of United. Clearly mutual appreciation, management, ownership and so on. Jim Ratcliffe, and there he was having selfies in the director's box today and so on. And it sort of feels nice. Do you think the club can feed off all that, or is that just soft stuff?
Well, it's not difficult to do simple things, is it? Turn up, smile, look like you're enjoying yourself, be with the fans, have selfies. They're things, address the press, which is what he did before the game. I mean, be here, be present at the club that you own. Football is not a normal business. It's a business that has emotion and passion and lots of tradition and history, that thrives on community and feeling and crowd. And the fact that the Glazer family have just not been here for 15, 20 years is a big problem in itself, and that they've had no voice whatsoever. So the fact that Jim Ratcliffe has spoken here today, he's turned up, he's obviously had Dave Brailsford here in the last few weeks as well, has to be a positive. I mean, because like you say, there's been no present voice or leadership since Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill left. And that's been one of the big problems. I mean, the club currently are operating without a CEO or a sporting director, which is just unbelievable. And they've been operating without a sporting director for 10 years. So, look, those things will be fixed. So you have to be more positive than we were before. And we hope it's the sort of beginning of the end of the Glazer ownership at the club, because they don't own, as much, well, they own as little of the club as they've ever owned. Jim Ratcliffe owns 25%. The Stock Exchange in New York owns 30%, I think. So they own what left? 45%. So look, they are being diluted and worked away and worked out of the club, if you like. So I think there is a better feeling, just because you know that there is going to be change. Jim Ratcliffe is a serious businessman who's not going to spend over £1 billion of his money without coming in and being disruptive. He has to disrupt what's been going on, which has been, to be fair, continued failure and poor culture for a long time. And the football decisions have been just mesmerising.
Okay. Is that United? Are you happy you've said what you need to say about United?
Yeah, I think one thing for me, and look, it's been said before by so many people, is that the style of play, and I'm not talking about I'm talking about patterns and combinations that players can rely upon when they go through difficult moments in a match. So that is what a team has. They have plays, whether it be in any sport in the world, you basically rely upon that sort of memory of what you've been working on in practice to come out onto the pitch at the weekend. And you expect that when there's difficult moments in the match, you rely upon those patterns and those movements to be able to get you through those challenging times in a match. And I watched Manchester United, and I have now for many, many years, and I said this probably a few weeks ago, the last time that I saw combinations of play and a series of passes that looked like they belonged to one another was under Louis van Gaal. What I see here is a collection of single passes where a player receives it and then seems to want to work out where the next player is rather than knowing where the next player is. And that's really surprising me because, Dutch coaching has been masterful over the last 30, 40, 50 years. Erik ten Hag's coaching, being at Bayern Munich and then going to Ajax, he's produced fantastic teams that have had really good combinations and patterns of play that I would see in a really sort of well-functioning team. And I don't see anything of it. And you watch them and they really struggle to be able to know where each other are and put combinations and patterns together. And that's the bit in the next few months that I think needs to come. Results, yes. Of course it's nice to have results and win. There's no real electricity in the stadium at this moment in time watching the team. So what we need to see is some sort of, if you like, thing develop that the team are improving and they're progressing and they're on the right track. Forget who the players are for now, because Spurs have proven today without their best players that you can go out there and still play in the same way. So that's the one thing that I noticed today and last week and the week before and the week before. Where is the default style strategy of play in this team? And I don't see it, and that is a real concern. So we know that United under Ole and under Jose Mourinho are more counter-attacking, but that's not what we expected from Erik ten Hag. We expected that high pressing, front foot, sort of really high tempo possession play, and I think we really need to try. And he said something a few weeks ago that he can't deliver that at Manchester United, which I thought was a really interesting thing for him to say, because other managers have proven at Brighton and at Tottenham that you can deliver with players that maybe aren't even as sort of, if you like, valuable in the transfer market as the ones that United have. So that's the last thing, really. We need to see that, I think, from Manchester United in the next few months. That how are they going to play? How are they going to win matches? What is the strategy? Because it really does, I think, it hampers those attacking stats quite, well, a lot. It hampers them a lot, because if you don't have a style of play, it really is a struggle. And I've said this before, I knew exactly where the next pass was going to go when I played at Manchester United, when I played with those players for many years. Now, obviously, Erik ten Hag's not had many years, but he's had 18 months, and I don't think that at this moment in time you can see those patterns developing.
You did forbid me from mentioning injuries in the context of this game, because Spurs have so many, but just to challenge you a little for the sake of the argument, is it any sort of an excuse or mitigation that those habits, which I presume as a professional footballer and a professional football team you build up over time with colleagues, have been prevented from being learnt because he's not able to put the same 11 out 2 weeks running? He has had issues around the team, and so they haven't developed those patterns, those habits that you talk about.
But the patterns that are developed in a football team are developed with the squad, not just with the team. And I accept that when you play on a Saturday together that you work, obviously, the more you play together, the more you obviously understand each other. But the patterns are developed on the training pitch with the squad. So the patterns aren't just given to the first 11 and then the rest of them have to try and work them out. And the fact that obviously they've lost Maguire, they've lost Lindelof, they've lost Lisandro Martinez and Casemiro, it does impact Manchester United because they've lost some sort of experience there, and some, particularly Martinez, he's good at playing out from the back. But like I say, if Tottenham have 5 or 6 of their best players missing, the whole midfield's missing today. But Højbjerg and Skip still play and try the same patterns, not as successfully and effectively as Bissouma and Sarr, but they still try and do the same things. Obviously, Porro and Udogie were the first choice left and right back, but even when Ben Davies and Emerson Royale have been centre backs, they still try and do the same things. It may not be as effective, it may not be as successful because they're not as good a players as the players that they've replaced, but you still see them trying to do the same things. Whereas so I don't think it's an excuse that you can say that Manchester United have got 4 or 5 players out. You can see that maybe the results might suffer a little bit. You can see that they might not do the things that they want to do as well. But I don't see any pattern either with the first choice players or without the first choice players. And that's a real concern, and that has to change. We need to see a Manchester United style of play develop in this next few months, or else I think the coach will be vulnerable because of the fact that ultimately the new owner will come in and look at it and think, I want to see how we're going to play. I want electricity in this stadium. I want razzmatazz. I want, Jamie Carragher called it, what did he say? Box office. Manchester United historically have been box office. Spurs are box office. I love watching Spurs play football. Manchester United are a hard watch. But they've got some exciting, talented players. It just needs to somehow gel in this next few months, and I hope it can gel for Erik ten Hag.
Well, you've praised Spurs plenty in the context of Man United, so give them a moment of their own here. Given that, as you rightly say, so many of their best creators are missing at the moment, how good were they today?
I think they'll be going back on that train or plane or whatever it is they go back to London on, and I think they'll be happy. I think they'll be proud. I think the coaches will be proud. And I also think there'll be a tinge of disappointment that we didn't go through and win it. But then I think they'll realise that without their 3 best attacking players, Kulusevski, Son and Maddison are their 3 best attacking players. And they've played here today without them. If they had those on the pitch today, they win that game. I'm absolutely convinced. Son goes and scores. Kulusevski definitely sets something up or creates a chance, and Maddison certainly does as well. And they've had their 2 most energetic, exciting midfield players who bring real sort of ferocity in that midfield off the ball, and on the ball they bring that sort of ability to go past players. So, with those 5 players in today, they win that game, and Ange Postecoglou knows that. So I think they can be really, really happy. I think to come here today, they had the first choice back 5, which is a real plus. And it looks like Spurs now, if you think of those 3 players I've mentioned, Son, Kulusevski and Maddison coming back in, and they have those 2 players back, if they can just stay in there, which they will do, I think, for the next few weeks, to get all that squad together, with those defenders, with Dragoshan how do you pronounce it?
Dragoshin.
Coming back in. You look at them now and you think, all of a sudden, how has that happened? How has Spurs got that squad? Good recruitment. And good coaching. You mix good recruitment with good coaching, all of a sudden you've got a good football team. And Dragoshin, Van der Ven and Romero look like, they've got 3 youngish centre-halves. They've got 2 exciting full-backs. They've got a really good goalkeeper. They get the midfield, obviously, back from the African nations and get those 3-4 players back. They can really go like that towards the end of the season. They had a little bit of a blip, but they can go like that. And they're really good to watch. They're so good to watch. And there's a lot going for them. And the manager is a breath of fresh air and has completely changed the whole football club, really, in terms of how it's viewed externally, but how internally, in terms of sort of the impact he's had on everybody.
And so, we'll do City and Newcastle in a second, that terrific game last night, but where do you put Spurs vis-à-vis City, vis-à-vis Arsenal, vis-à-vis Liverpool, the real big hitters?
I think... No, they're not City, obviously. I think they can get close to Arsenal and Liverpool this season. I think if they get those players back, and you said it was a bad draw for them getting Manchester City in the FA Cup, and I thought, I'm not going to put it... If they go out of the FA Cup, which can never be a positive because they need to win a trophy, Spurs, but if they can go out of the FA Cup and have the Premier League just to focus on and get all the players fit, they could be really dangerous because I don't see any team that plays better football than them. And if they can be clinical and keep that defence together and the goalkeeper continues as he is, they could run close towards the end of the season. They're sort of getting towards sort of 3 and 2. They won't win the league, I don't think, but I do think they can really be dangerous.
Okay, winning the league, Manchester City yesterday. I mean, it was a super game of football, but you can't start the conversation without Kevin De Bruyne, can you? And it just felt to me like a potentially pivotal moment. He walks across the white line and the whole world changes.
Ominous. I was watching it and I knew what was coming. I've seen it before. I text a group with 10 minutes to go, say it's a massive 10 minutes this. Feeling that City were going to go score. I'm not a gambling man, but I honestly, I thought they're going to score here. And they're going to punch everybody in the ribs. and that's what it will have done. You know, there's no doubt that Arsenal and Liverpool watching that will have thought, we know what's coming, and the confidence it will have given City to come back from behind against Newcastle up there at St James's Park. De Bruyne coming on the pitch like he did, impacting the game. Oscar Bob, the finish was fantastic from Oscar Bob. There was just a feeling that will be a sinking feeling for the rest of the Premier League. I think that last 10 minutes of that match, because there was something about it that said, we're here, we're breathing down your neck, and we know what we're doing, and we know where we're going. And there was a little bit of that about that game, and you got that same feeling in the stadium. I got that same feeling at home.
What struck me, I'm not qualified to say this, was how simple he made the game look in what was a really complex, intense game. He came on, he stroked that first goal, beautiful, and then again, put me right because I'm off my territory here, but I hear pros like you say there was no angle for that pass. There was nothing to. There was no way of creating that pass, and there can't be many others who could have conjured that pass.
No, De Bruyne is delicious. He is just a thing of beauty when you watch him. He's amazing. We've missed him, obviously, in terms of the last few months. City have missed him, obviously, more importantly. But he's just a delight, someone that would be respected in every club. You'd want to turn up and watch him play. The way in which he sort of delivers the ball with such accuracy and precision under such pressure. He's a different level and one of the great players in the Premier League. And I think Trent Alexander-Arnold, someone who can deliver a ball brilliantly. I think David Beckham, who I played with for many years behind him, was a beautiful striker of a ball. And that is where Kevin De Bruyne is, right at the very, very top in terms of delivery, striking of a ball, set pieces, crosses, passes. World class. Just world class, and someone that, if City can keep him fit. You talk about injuries, by the way. They've had no De Bruyne and Haaland for a period, and they've had defenders out, and they've missed Rodri for 4 or 5 games. So all teams have injuries. So they just move forward. Rodri's so important. Made a tackle in the first half, Rodri, when he got back. I don't know who it was that, actually. Maybe Isak. Maybe it was Isak, where he absolutely fantastic. So I think Pep will be a little bit annoyed with his defenders, just giving goals. So I think he'll want them to just tighten up a little bit. But it just reminds me of a normal season where they're just kicking into gear beyond Christmas. They're in the pack where you want to be, and they're dangerous now. And I think the rest are in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, and of course they get a couple of weeks off now, which is lovely. As Manchester United do, as Spurs do, we're sort of halfway through this split weekend of the big hitters. Obviously, Arsenal and Liverpool at Bournemouth to play next week. So, how are you feeling it all up there?
No, I mean, to transfer the pressure back to City, something's got to happen, because I think City will feel really sort of sticking, they'll stick the chests out after this weekend. I think next weekend, Arsenal and Liverpool can't afford to make mistakes. I mean, it's probably a little bit too dramatic, that, but they've got to make sure that they do their jobs and put pressure on. I think the way in which City have slipped up and dropped points in the first part of the season, I would have expected Arsenal, not Liverpool so much, I have to say. I don't feel as though Liverpool were expected at the start of the season to be where they are. But Arsenal in particular, with the signings that they made, I would have expected Arsenal to think that they could have had a 5-6 point gap on Manchester City that would, not necessarily have won them the league, but it would give them that cushion and the ability to have a mistake, knowing that City will have a run at some point. So I think City will be very comfortable at this point, but Arsenal and Liverpool have to do their jobs next weekend.
And just on the subject of last weekend, last up here, and I've not warned you about this, but next Saturday evening, which is the next live game on Sky, actually, from the Premier League, could see the return of Ivan Toney.
Yes.
I wonder how excited you are by that prospect.
Yeah, and obviously there's been big talk, hasn't there, around a huge transfer potentially to Arsenal. I don't see it happening personally at this point in the sort of season or in the transfer window, but I think that he's a brilliant player, isn't he? And I think that we've seen little clips on social media this week of goals that he's been scoring. I saw a Panenka penalty this morning, which was nice. He's obviously getting his games in behind the scenes, behind closed doors. Brentford are a wonderful... I love going to Brentford. It's one of the favourite grounds in the league. I've not been for a bit, but with Ivan Toney up front, with Visser, with Mbermo, they're sort of one of the great threats. And they're a bit of a throwback of how they play. And I think him coming back will mean, and I hope Brentford keep him for the rest of this season. I hope Ivan Toney plays at the highest level as well at some point in the near future. But I think for Brentford to keep him for the rest of this season will be really good. I mean, there's talk of Chelsea and Arsenal sniffing around him. But I hope he does stay at Brentford to give them a really strong finish to the season, and I'm delighted that he's back.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other business?
Reading?
Oh yes, yeah, that wasn't pretty, was it?
No, but I think what it shows is that fans, and we've seen it over the last few years, that fans will stand up for what they believe is right, and they're not going to accept these types of things anymore. I have to say, we're still sat in a period whereby the Premier League haven't done a deal with the EFL, whereby the regulator isn't coming in, and the Premier League is still in denial. And we need that regulator, we need that situation resolving so that we can get some control in the game and get some power in the right hands, because it seems that the fans are helpless to be able to solve these situations. And I think it deserved a mention. That, you know, sort of my heart and sort of what would be thoughts go to the Reading fans who at this moment in time are, you know, feeling desperate, and that they shouldn't feel like that. Yeah, of course, you should feel like that for your football club, but then there should be a resolution available to them.
No, absolutely, really good club. So recently in the Premier League, proper fans for their town. It has its constituency,
Yeah,
and it's feeling pain at the moment. So good luck to the mighty Royals.
yeah, absolutely.
Good on you, Gary.
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Cheers.